I'm listed as an attendee right now. Can you give me permission to present? I
Yep.
think, there you go. All right, perfect. All right, just give me a second to bring my screen up. All right, let me know if you guys can see my screen okay. It should be sharing now. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yeah, we got it.
Oh, okay, beautiful. Well, first of all, thank you guys for your time. I know everybody's busy here, so as I said earlier, we'll keep this really succinct. The focus of this call is really just to talk about the data entry into the system, and I want to cover some of the reporting tools that you have access to, as well as that's equally as important as putting the information into the system. Just a tiny bit of background. The environmental side of our system has grown probably as fast as any other part, and as I'm sure all of you are aware, perhaps one of the quickest growing aspects of animal welfare in general is environmental management. So what started out to be actually a component of our health module, and it was really focused on water chemistry, has grown significantly since its inception. And right now, our environmental side of the system has become its own module because it grew that much. It really just needed, it had that many configuration tools and things that it warranted, having its own system. So it's a company level system, which means when you configure things, depending on what your user permission has, you can configure for the entire company if you have those proper permissions. But right now our system has over 100 different parameters that are available that you can test with, and it goes well beyond water chemistry at this point. We have sound, we have light, and now we even have some physical indicators and things like water flow and pump pressures and things like that. So it continues to grow as we get feedback from our membership. We also do have the ability when we go through the setup process to customize the different parameters, the units, and also the ranges. So, when you have an exhibit, when you tell the system that you want to record environmental data to that system, on the environment side, we link it, and it's then called an environmental location. It's really the same thing, but it's just on the other side, and it allows us to do all those configurations. And as I said, they can be the same for every location, or you can make them different. And this has already been done for you. So we're not going to touch on that too much this call, really at all this call, unless you have specific questions, but most of that should be done. The only reason you should need to go in there from this point forward is if you have to tweak maybe high-low ranges, or if there's, you want to change the order of those parameters or what have you. We did try to build a lot of flexibility into the system. So right now, as I show you the manual entry tools, you do have the ability to enter your results by a specific exhibit or test site, or you can select parameters and you can enter, a parameter. And I'll show you exactly how that works, and I have a feeling most of you have already at least been exposed to that tool. We did build an environmental grouping tool as well, and this is at the facility level. So when you guys are logged in within your facility and you go to settings, you have the ability to group locations. And why would you do that? The reason for that is we understand that you might have numerous tanks that are on one system, and you're only taking one sample that represents maybe 5 tanks. So instead of having to enter results for 5 tanks, what the grouping system does is it allows you to designate one of those as sort of the representative test site for a group, and that's the only test site that will show up when you go to enter those results, and it will automatically copy those results to the other members, if you will, of that group. So it's just a convenience tool, and can save you a lot of time, of course. We do have some system alerts and notifications that we'll go over quickly today as well, and we have some scheduled reporting functions that you might be interested in, and of course there's printable reports and analytics. So Without further ado, I'm going to dive right into it. And by the way, we'll keep this real casual. If you guys have any questions about anything I'm covering as we move forward, you can just stop me and ask, or you can wait to the end, whatever works best for you. So really, the very first thing to do is to enter water quality is very simple. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you're entering it for the proper sea life store, or not store, I'm sorry, Sea Life Center, Sea Life Aquarium. And for those of you that only have access to one, in OERCA they're called facilities, so this list that you see over here on the left-hand panel, each one of these buttons represents a separate facility, so all the data is segregated for that facility. Now, if you only have access to one facility, you're only going to see one button here, so it makes it extremely simple, but some of you may have access to more than one. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you're in the right place, and the way you know that is when you click one of the buttons, they'll turn blue, and then you'll also get a confirmation at the top here that will list the name of the facility that you're in, so you can be sure you're entering data for the right place. After that, you'll be clicking on this button that says water quality. I will, just a little heads up for everybody, as I just mentioned, our system has grown, and we are now expanding our water quality to environmental quality. So you will notice, if you're paying attention, that some of these button labels are going to be changing over the next few weeks. We're slowly starting to replace water with environment because it goes well beyond just water. So just a heads up, if you log in one day and this button name is different, it's still the same tool, just with a different label on it. So anyway, that's how you'll start. Select your facility, click on this button right here, and then, as I said, you have two options. The first one is by exhibit, which is really by test site, and then the second one is by parameter. So when you open up this tool, it will default with the tab that says by exhibit, and it's going to give you a list of all the test sites that have been configured. This is actually an improper label where it says location. Kind of a minor nomenclature thing, but I don't want to confuse it and anybody. So this will give you all the test sites that you have set up in the system. To enter the data against them is very simple. You just select it, and again, you'll know it's selected because it will be highlighted in blue, and then whatever the configured parameters are for that test site will show up in the panel on the right. These might all be the same parameters, they might all be different, it just depends on how your facility had us configure them. So once you select that, you go ahead and you just key in the results manually and hit submit. It's really as simple as that. You do not have to enter a new input for every single one of them, so if you only have 2 or 3 to enter at the time you're putting the results in, the system won't throw an error if each one of the parameters does not have a value for it. Again, the other option is you can enter by parameter. So if you have one day where you do all salinities and pHs, no problem. You can go to the by parameter tab, select the parameter, and then this right-hand panel will populate with only those test sites that are configured to have salinity for it. So it won't show you everything, it will only show you those test sites that are configured to have salinity in this example, or whatever parameter you have selected, and then you can just go through the different test sites and enter them. And that's really all there is to it. One thing that is important to note here, and I can show you this when I go over to the live system, if you are entering at one time, like at a sitting, more than just salinity, let's say you're doing salinity, pH, and ammonia, for example, you do not have to click on the submit button before you move to the next parameter. You won't hurt anything if you do that, but be aware that each time you hit submit, you create a record. And the only reason that's going to be important for you to understand is if I do salinity, hit submit, do pH, then hit submit, do ammonia, then hit submit, when you go to look at the report, each one of those is going to be a separate record with a separate timestamp, so they will not all be neatly on the the same row when you look across, and each parameter is a column. So if you want them all, which I imagine you do, if you're entering them all at one time, just know that you do not have to hit submit in between switching. The program will cache your results, and then you can submit them all at one time when you're finished. And again, I'll show you exactly how that works when we get into the live system.
So Todd,
We do have,
sorry, Todd, just a couple of questions before you moved on.
yeah.
On that previous page, you've got those two other columns, TNTC. Is that like too numerous to count? And then a BDL. I'm not sure what that stands for.
Yes, I'm sorry. I should have mentioned that. Yes, you're exactly right. That's exactly what it is. If you do not have a numerical result to put in, you can just flag it as too numerous to count or below detectable level.
Right.
That's what those stand for.
Okay.
Now, if you select one of those, you can't put in a numerical result, which is, I think, kind of common sense. But
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what those are.
Okay. And then lastly, if you're entering those data points and you haven't submitted, does it matter if you leave that window? Like if you got interrupted and went to a different task or whatever, like how long would that data sit there? Or would it be lost and you got to start again?
You will, and I'm trying to think what the threshold is on that. I don't remember offhand, but for security purposes, almost like if you're logged into a bank website, it will automatically log you out after a period of inactivity.
Right.
I want to say I think it's 15 minutes. I could double check on that, but yeah, you don't. You're always better off once you start the record keeping to go ahead and finish it and not just leave it there.
So treat it as a session, like treat that entry process as a session. So whilst you don't have to submit on every parameter, if you're in attendance at your station doing your water quality, that counts essentially as a session. So as long as it's active and open and you're entering data, that's cool. But if you have to leave that session for whatever reason, another task or duty, you may have to hit submit if you're going to be away from that station for some time.
Exactly, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Because otherwise, you're right. You would run the risk, or even if you had an internet interruption or something, you could lose all the work you did. So you probably don't want to risk that for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
We do have an alert system, and I'll show you how to turn this on within our communication center. The way that this works is anytime the user is entering data, if it is outside of the prescribed range, and again, those are fully configurable for whatever your needs are, but if you enter any data point that's outside of a range, the system will warn you. And the reason we do this, we do it for two reasons. Number one is mistakes are easy to make when you're keying in data. You might hit an extra key by mistake or the wrong number, and this is kind of a check for you to say the system's telling you, hey, just so you know, you're about to send an alert to everybody on the list, and are you sure this is the correct data? So it'll show you the value right here, and then it will also tell you for that particular parameter what the low and the high is that you have set. So you'll know exactly where you stand, and you have two options. You can either stop and edit, or you can submit it and acknowledge that you'll be sending an alert.
Sorry to interrupt, Todd. Just a quick question. This is Jess from Sea Life. When it does send an alert off, who is the alert? Who has been notified of this alert?
It is completely up to you, and I'll show you where you turn that on. We have a communication center that has a variety of different notices and alerts, and it's really up to you which ones you want to receive. And again, I'll show you how to turn that on, but it will send it to everybody within the communication center that has that particular alert activated.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Todd, another question from myself. If I'm looking at a display tank, who sets or how are those ranges set? Who sets those ranges and how are they set?
Whoever has access, and let me jump back up here for a second. If you look at these buttons over here on the left-hand column, you're going to notice the very top two. These are the only two that aren't actually facilities. These are actually modules. And one is the Health Center and one is the Environmental Center. And the Environment button is where you do all the configuration. So some of you may already have access to that. I don't know. Some of you may not. But that is where, if you see that button, that means you have the ability to go in and edit those. But it's already been done. We did most of it on our side based on the spreadsheets that were given to us. So most of it should already be there. I know there are a number of Merlin curators that do have access to this, and we've had separate calls with them very specific to the configuration side of the system. So I don't know, I can't give you names who has access to that, but we would certainly be willing to help out with any of that, but most of it should already be completed.
Okay, thank you.
The last thing on the alerts too, by the way, is there is a comment section, and that can be important because if you're recording something and you don't want everyone to panic, there might be a very good reason that your salinity is off or your pH is off, and maybe you did a backwash or whatever the case may be. So it provides you the opportunity to write a comment in, to let everyone know what may have caused the high or low. And this is actually what they look like. They're very basic. They're just meant to notify you, give you the most essential information you need. So it'll let you know the date that it's a water quality alert, what facility it came from, location, the parameter that was out of range. It tells you what the low and high configurations are, and current just means this is the value that was entered. And if there are any comments, those will show up as well. So this is what it'll look like if you ever receive one of those. As far as turning these on or off, for those of you that have the facility management user permission, you're going to see a gear icon in this upper right-hand corner in this top navigation bar in the upper right. And the way to get to the communication center is you will click on the gear icon, which will take you to the settings menu. And this has actually changed. I'll show it to you in the live system. This was growing and growing and growing, so we have now tabbed it. It's still all the same buttons, all the same tools. It's just organized a little bit differently. But you'll click on the communications button, and once you click on the communications button, it will take you to this. And this is specific to every facility. So whatever facility that I'm logged into, in this example right here, I'm in Alton Towers, that means this communication list is specific to Alton Towers. But anyway, setting it up is fairly simple. You just would select the name of the person you want to turn the alert or the notice on for, and then you would go over here, and we have two tabs, and I won't get into this because we're focusing on water quality, but just briefly, scheduled, if you hit the scheduled tab, these are things like daily notices that go out at a specified time of the day. And those might be like a census report. So at the end of the day, the system will send you an email that says how many mortalities were recorded that day, how many acquisitions, how many births, that type of thing, how many hot sheets were recorded. Whereas instant, the difference between the two is an instant alert is triggered the moment the data is entered, which is what water quality is. So if you scroll to the bottom of this list, and by the way, these all have descriptors in them, so you can read and it will tell you what the alert or the scheduled notice is about. But the two steps you need to do is, well, three really. You select the name, you'll go to the Instant tab, toggle this on-off switch to on, and then you want to toggle the email switch to say yes. Once you do that, that means this person is going to receive a water quality alert. So again, you have complete control over who gets them and who doesn't. That's completely up to you. And that's really it for that. Let me get into the live system and show you a few things here. So actually, I'm going to go into our test company so I don't break anything. There we go. Oh, I'm going to have to log in again. Yeah, this is the inactivity I was just talking about. Give me 1 second. Actually, while I'm waiting for that to log in, I will tell you, so as I said, a couple of different ways to look at the data once it's entered. We have a print center right here, which has two reports that are specific to the environmental results that have been entered. And those would be the water test results. And again, you'll log in one day and this will say environmental results, just again as a heads up, and water quality alerts. The difference between these two reports is the water test result report will report on everything within the date range. You do have to define a date range. It will report on everything within the date range that you select, and all, the area locations that you select. Whereas the water quality alert only will report on alerts. So if you only want to look at the values that were entered that were outside of any ranges, that's what the water quality alert report does. The test results we have in analytics. We will be putting the water quality alerts in analytics too. It will just be a different, maybe more convenient. Everybody has different preferences on the way they like to look at data, so we will be building that, and that should be available hopefully in the near future. Quick just look at what that looks like. This is what the water quality report looks like. So every parameter is its own column, as you can see here, and then the values go across. And this is what I was saying. If you entered just temperature and you didn't enter salinity and hit submit and then entered salinity, you'd see the salinity would be toggled down here. So you kind of would have this little staircase going down by the enter by parameter mode that I was telling you about. But this is what the report looks like. It's meant to be just a printed report. The ones that you see in red, that we conditionally format. So if anything was entered that was outside of the prescribed range for that test site, it will highlight in red. It just kind of makes it easy to see. And the water alert report looks like this. So it just gives you the name of the test site, the date and time, what the parameter was that was out of range. It will show you the entered result right here, and then it gives you the configured high-low here, and then if comments were added, you'll see the comments. So that's the way that report works. As I said, we'll eventually be putting this into the analytics, and you'll see why here in a moment. So let me see if my test companies come up. There it is. Perfect. So just to run through, and I don't want to beat this up too bad, I'm sure you guys get the idea on the by parameter to kind of show you how it works. I think the test sites is self-explanatory. You select it, it will show the configured parameters for that. I will just make mention, if these are not in the order that you want them in, we can change that. So all of that is again, fully customizable. The order, the high-low ranges, the parameters that show all of that. When you go to the by parameter function, as I said, the system will cache the data that you enter. So let's say I'm doing pH, and I want to, I don't know, I'll just enter a couple values just to demonstrate. Let's say it's 7.88, and then I want to do water temperature. So you'll notice I did not hit submit, and maybe this is 40, and maybe this is 35. Now I can go through as many of these as I want without hitting submit, and then when I submit it, they'll all be submitted as a single record with a single timestamp. If you need to go back and do something, oh, I was on pH, sorry. You can see it holds on to the data. So you can go back if you need to add something else here, and then I could go to salinity and add salinity if I needed to. I don't think it would make sense to jump around quite this much, but you get the idea that you have the ability to go back and forth, and the system will hold on to that, to the data points that you've already entered. So, and then when you're all done with that, you can go ahead and submit it, and it will all be submitted as a single record. Last thing I want to show you, and then I will open it up to questions, is the Analytics Center. So the two primary way, oh, I did want to show you one more thing, I apologize. So I'm in Sydney right now. I'm going to go to Settings in Sydney, and I am going to show you live the Communication Center briefly. So as I said, this has been organized a little bit differently than what I had in that PowerPoint slide. The exact same buttons, we just have them tabbed is all, instead of having them listed. The page was getting kind of long, so this is kind of a neater way to look at it. But it will default to the People and Places tab, and here's the Communication Center right here. So if you want to turn on the water quality alert for anybody, you would go to the Instant tab. You would select a name from this list, and again, to confirm you have the right name selected, it will show up here, and then I can go down to the bottom and click it on, and and say email yes, and right now Craig would receive all water quality alerts for Sydney. Craig, I won't do that to you right now. I'll turn this back off, but now you guys know if you want to activate this alert for any for any of your users, that is how you would do it. The other thing while I'm here that I will show you is there is a tab called Environmental Report Profiles. And what this does, I'm going to go into our test company to, oh, you guys already have one. Never mind, maybe I can stay here. So what this does is it allows you to automate regular reports that the system will just send to you. So if you have managers that aren't logging into the system very often, but at the end of the day you want to give them something, this you can customize and configure a report here. So the first thing you do, you pretty much start in the upper left hand corner, work across to the right, jump down to the email list, and then schedule it. So that's sort of the workflow. You can add, we call them a profile name in OERCA. It's just the name of the report, whatever you want to call it. So we already have one in here called Joe's report. And I can see that he has configured these test sites. So the whole idea of this is you may not want to have every parameter or every test site. You might be monitoring a specific group of exhibits or a specific system, and you might only be concerned with pH. So this allows you to just look at what you want to look at every day. So in this particular report, so by the way, if I want to add additional profiles, I just hit the add button, I'll name it, and then submit it, and it will show up in this list. Everything, once they're in the list, when you select it, it will turn blue, and the rest of these panels will populate to whatever is configured for that profile name, that report. So this particular report has these 4 test sites that have been configured, and the way you do that, obviously if I created a new one, these would all be blank because nothing would have been configured yet. If you click the Manage button, it will give you a list of all the test sites, and you can see the ones that are selected, and I can select as many more. So each time I click on one, it will turn blue, and I can select 2 or 3 or 4 or 10, however many you want to select for that particular report, and then they will show up in this panel. And then in addition, you tell the system what parameters you want. So you can see these were configured for this, but if I want to add parameters or remove parameters, I would go to this tool. If I want to add them, I would click on the parameter from our master list here, and then click this arrow, and it will populate it over to this side. If I want to remove a parameter, I would click it from the configured side, and then
this is working.
And then click it to move it back over. And then that's really it.
Dial in. They can't
sorry, Tez, can you go on mute?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure if you could hear me or not. Yes, I can.
No worries. The email list is a little bit different than like the communication center, and what I mean by that is I can see Joe was having fun with Gareth on this one, beard face. So the email list can be anybody. They do not have to be an OERCA user, so you can go here and enter any email address, and we did that because a lot of our members have outside consultants that help them with their environmental quality, so that's why we have that like that. So you can enter whoever you want to receive this report, and then you tell the system when you want it sent. This particular one is not, oh, it is active. 6 a.m. would be, you can do it any time. The way this report works is it will gather all the data from the last time the report is run. Normally, I would probably suggest at the end of the day when that day's data has been entered, and then the report will grab that day, and it will send it to you. So you can tell the system you want the data in the body of the email, or you want it as an attached PDF, or you can have it as both, and you just want to make sure this is active. You set the schedule and the time, and then click apply, and then that report is set up. So just wanted to let you guys know that that's available to you. And the last thing I'll show you is analytics. So the analytics tool is pretty fun. We have a lot of different reports here. I'll focus on the environmental one. Many of these reports have similarities in the way that they work, and I'll tell you a few tricks of the trade as you get into this. But one of the neat things about this analytics tool is it's very dynamic. You can interact with the graphs, you can interact with the tables, and you also have the ability to export any of the tables that you want. So if you filter to a particular test site or a particular parameter or whatever it is that you want, if you want to take that data to go or manipulate it in a different manner, you can export it into an Excel file right from the analytics chart. What this will do also, by the way, you can see for our setup company, we have access to all of the facilities. I think there's like 54, something along those lines. So this takes a little while to load, because what the system is doing is it's looking at my user credentials and it filters all of this based on what I have access to. So if you only have access to one or two sites, it will only show those in this facility menu. When you open this up, it would only show what your user permission has access to. A few things to note: there's no way we can't default to a set area or a set parameter, because everybody's are different and everybody's user permissions are different. So when this loads, it loads everything. So this line graph is a mess, to be honest with you. There's really no meaningful information or trends you can make out from this. So we do have some cheat guides in here to tell you how to best use the panels, the different tabs that we have. But I just wanted to let you know that it will put everything into the tables and the graphs when you very first load it. These analytics always work best when you drill down a little bit and you get a little more granular and you look at specific sites and specific parameters. It will default, the selected date range will default when you load this to 1 week, but if I want to change this to a month or whatever I want to change it to, you can switch on the fly, and you're going to see not only does this graph change, but this table will change as well. This particular tab where it says parameter compare is really conducive to taking a single test site and comparing multiple parameters, whereas this tab is the opposite of that. So I'll show you how that works. As I said, we do have cheat guides in here. Here's a little cheat guide right here that's going to tell you every day is recorded. If multiple results are recorded for a single day, the system will average it, but you will have the itemized list of results in this table. And then this cheat guide just kind of tells you the best way to use these filters here to look at data the best. So for example, let me just go to someplace I know has data in there. Try Hunt Stanton. And we'll go to, we'll pick out, so this is best suited to pick out a single test site. So I will go to, let's say, I don't know, T1, and you'll see this graph suddenly will start to make more sense. And then I can select whatever parameters I want. So if I want to look at just water temperature, I can select water temperature. If I want to compare water temperature to another parameter, I can. Let's say I want to look at pH. The problem is the values are so different, you can see these start to flatten out. So I can then remove water temperature and just look at pH. If I want to look at two values that I know are going to be a little closer, let's say ammonia and nitrite, I can do that, and oh, that's pretty flat right there. But you get the idea. You have the flexibility to look at whatever you want, and you'll notice each time I make a selection here, this table down here changes. By the way, this table is conditionally formatted, so all the low alert column is in blue, the high alert column is in red, and this is just showing what you've configured for that test site as the low and high. And as I scroll through this, everything in green means it's inside the selected parameters. If you see anything in a different color, it means it's either low or high, and I'm not seeing anything low or high. Let me just erase this for the sake of going through the table. I'll find another example for you. But yeah, if this result is low, it'll show up in the result column as blue. If the result is high, it will show up here as red. So these are conditionally formatted, and that makes it easier for you when you're scrolling through to quickly at a glance see what parameters are out of range. This one, as I said, works exactly the opposite. This is meant to look at a single parameter and compare multiple test sites. You can see there's no way to make meaning out of this, and we won't try to. So I will go to, I don't know, a single. Let's Let's try pH here, see how that works. So I would do a single parameter here. Still a mess because right now this is showing me all the recorded test sites for that one parameter. So this is all of those pH sites. And when I mouse over, it will give that to me, not only in the table, of course, but it will give it to me in the little pop-up that you see, but still very hard to make sense out of it. So the best way to do this would be to go in here and I can pick, one test site, or if I want to compare that to maybe, rock pool, I can do that, and then it will show me two, and I can see how those compare together. And again, you'll notice this table updates as I do that. So you can not only see it in the graph here, the table is here, and when you're all done, if you want to take this table to go, I can click on these three little dots and say I want to export this data, and it will allow me to export it into an Excel workbook. Which is kind of a nice feature. Also, just to note, and this is important, many of you might only record one sample a day or one parameter a day, but there are occasions, especially for those of you linked to Sinai, that might have 2, 3, maybe even 4 or 5, who knows how many samples per day. The way this line graph works is it only reports or shows graphically for each day. So if there are multiple data entries for that, it will average them. And so there's a couple things you can do. First of all, the table will show you the itemized list. So you can see at a glance if there's the same parameter that's been recorded for the same test site multiple days. The other thing you can do is you can click on any of these points, and when I click on it, it's interactive. So it will take a minute, but it will show me that dot right there is this. And I can go back and forth, and I can click on any of these. The other thing I can do is I can drill down. So if I want to look at, let me try a different parameter that I think has a greater chance of having multiple test sites here. Let me try ammonia here. So I can drill down, and any time in any of these reports, if you ever hover over one of our graphics and you see these little up-down arrows, that means you have the ability to drill down. And all that means is it will, if you can interact with the graph, and it will take you to the next level. This particular one is really basic. It takes me from looking at the entire day to the different times within that day. So if there are 2 or 3 records for that day, I can click on the drill down, and you're going to see it changes into a little circle goes around it. Now if I click on these, the entire graph will change, and there's only one result for each of these. But you can see if there were 2 or 3 or 4, it would show me the listed times across the bottom, and now I'm reporting on a specific day. Let me click on one more just to see if I can get one maybe that, yeah, this one has multiple done throughout. This must have been Sinai reporting. So you can see how that works. And then if I need to drill back up, I just hit the up arrow key. We do have a dashboard. This is just meant to look at kind of everything. Again, it works best if you were to get granular and look at a specific location here. I'll look at Creasel again. You can make more sense out of it. This is pre-configured to show, water, salinity, pH, ammonia, nitrate, but if you want to change any of these, you can. You can go into this table right here, configure it however you want, and it's sort of a dashboard for you to look at. And then with a lot of our reports, we have sort of a catch-all table view. You can go up here, filter it however you want using these slicers at the top. It will show you the table, and here's an example of, you can see at a glance that all these results were high. When you see them in red, it means they were high. If you see any in blue, it means they were low. Again, this is just a table view. You can filter it by date, whatever facility, test site, parameter, and then I can export this if I want. And that's really it, guys. I'm happy to answer any questions, but that was the majority of what I wanted to cover, and I do appreciate your time and patience. Does anyone have any questions about any of that? Did I put everyone to sleep?
No, mate. That's really good. It's really good. I'll wait for people to come off mute for questions. While that's happening, can you just show me again going in if I wanted to change a range on a display tank? So as an example, you could use Kelly Tolton's if you wanted, and I'll choose a tank.
Sure. So the first step, all configuration. Oh, I didn't show grouping. I can come back to that. All configuration takes place in the environment module. So that's the first thing you do. You'll click on that. And again, it will confirm this. And you want to go to settings. And then you want to go to the locations button. And I'm sorry, where did you say what?
Let's go to Kelly Tolton's in New Zealand.
Sure. Yep.
We'll change theirs because they're not on the call, so we can play with them.
We'll create all sorts of problems for them. All right, I'm going to filter this so we don't have to go through this huge list.
Yeah.
All right.
And if you go to Spiny Dragons, you had a Spiny Dragon tank there. There it is there. S.
I see. Does it? Oh, Spiny Sea Dragons.
Yeah, let's go to that one.
Okay, so what you'll do is you'll select it, and again, you'll know it's selected when it's highlighted in blue, and then I'll click on the parameter button.
Right.
And it will bring up a list of the configured parameters. So it's going to show a list of all parameters in the panel that's going to be on the left-hand side right here. And then this is a list of everything that's been configured.
Cool. Yep. Okay.
And if I wanted to change the order, I can drag and drop, if I want bromine to be up here, and this is the order, by the way, that it would show up in the manual entry. So if your YSI probe or Hawk Analyzer always spits things out in one particular order and you want to match that, you can. So that's how you change the order. If I want to remove one of these parameters, let's say for this particular exhibit, where
you can remove bromine. You can remove bromine as an example.
Okay. That is a good example. So I would select it,
Yeah.
And then I would click this arrow to the left, and it will populate it back over here. That you can see it right there.
Yeah.
So that's all there is to it. Now, when you do change the parameter list, you do have to save that.
Yeah. Sure.
When you change the ranges, you don't have to click this green check mark. It automatically submits. But right now, I'm going to submit this since I changed this. And then if I had a, let's say, water temperature I wanted to change, I double-click on it, and it will give me the parameter values right here.
Gotcha.
And I can go ahead and change whatever the ranges those are. Let's say you're getting too many alerts and you want to broaden that range, you can do that, and then click on the green check mark, and it will submit it, and you'll see that number change.
Okay, fantastic.
That's it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And this is a really long list that you see over here. So if you're looking for something in particular, we do have a search function. So if you're, I don't know what you might be looking for.
What's your ozone? What's your units on ozone? Like I just saw down the bottom. You've got ozone.
Ozone. Oh, let me just try that. We only have one unit right now with ozone DU.
What's that mean?
Gosh, you know what? I don't know. That's a good question. I shouldn't say everything. Much of what we have in here were requested by membership, and once we entered everything, it was interesting because you can have a unit that really is the same thing. You can when you're looking at some of these, milligram per liter, and some of these units really are the same thing, but some people like them listed a little bit differently. So that's when we started having duplicates, but with different measurements. And ozone was one that was entered that way because it was requested, and there were never any other units requested for it.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, like you can see the right here you have ppm and then milligram per liter. So, same thing. Something else that might be worth noting, if you were configuring an exhibit from scratch, when I select these, it remembers the order I have selected them, and it will put them in that order over here. So if I select, I don't know, I'll just say air temperature, and then I select flow rate, and then I come all the way up here, and I select combined chlorine. When I hit this right arrow button to dump these over to this side, it will put them in the order that I selected them.
Okay.
So a little trick of the trade that's kind of handy to know. The other thing that's handy to know too is it will always place it below the parameter that's selected on this side. So if you want to add it to the end, you'll want to select the last parameter. If you want to put it up at the top, you want to select the top parameter.
Cool. Anyone else got questions for Todd?
No, we're good in the little bar.
That means I did a fabulous job explaining that to all of you, right?
Yeah. Cheers, Melvin.
No, we're good. Thank you very much. Thanks, Todd. That was great.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, no, I know you guys are busy. I appreciate your time as well. Thank you.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, just having audio problems. So just a quick question with the Senai. Does that just populate automatically into OERCA?
It does, yes.
Oh, that is amazing.
The way that it works, so at the company HQ level, we have to have there's a proper login that we have to configure there, and it's per facility, and that will hook up to the API, which is what grabs the data. And then there's a separate configuration at the facility level, and you have to map it. You have to tell the system this Sinai ID matches this test site, so it knows where in OERCA to put it. But once that's configured, yes, it will, and you can tell it the frequency. You can just do it once a day, or you can do it once every hour if you want.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. So would you be doing that, or is that something that we would have to do?
No, well, we can certainly assist you. I don't, to be honest with you, I know a few facilities have already been set up with it, and if you're interested in that, let me know. I don't know if Joe and Craig, you might know. I don't know if there was a methodical rollout of that or
no. I mean,
not.
I guess part of the answer is yes, Todd. There would have been a methodical rollout to those sites, probably in UK, Europe, who are working with it. And I think from a central perspective, there's not a great understanding exactly which sites in ANZ are using Senai. So I think it would not have been methodically rolled out in our part of the world, just because they don't really know who's doing what over here with Senai. So it would start with the site, probably contacting yourself and Joe Lavery, requesting for that to be done at a site level.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Cool.
I know the only thing we ran into in the system, and Sinai was doing exactly what it was supposed to, but I know Karen was getting a little frustrated because if, I guess, one of the slides isn't prepared properly, you get a lot of out-of-range readings. And so I think when he first set it up, one of the sites was grabbing the API data every hour, or maybe it was every 2 hours, but nevertheless, it was often, and it was triggering alerts because it was always out of range. And unlike the manual entry, when it automatically does it, there's no opportunity, for the system to ask anybody if that's correct or not. So it just kept firing all these alerts. So just something to be aware of, I guess.
But I guess that would actually help you iron out those problems anyway. So it's just telling you that some further attention is required. So I think it's an appropriate response.
Yep.
Okay. Well, if there are no further questions, guys, we'll call it a day there. And as I say, I've recorded this, so I'll try and get a link on Hydra for that recording so you can go back and look at it again to work through your own tanks and systems. And anything else, please just reach out to Todd or myself, and we'll endeavour to help you.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Okay.
Bye all.
All right, bye everybody. Thanks again.
So much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.